I would now like to call Mike Keel up to introduce our speaker.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and guests. 2,214 men and women of our military service have paid the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan since October 2001. That's almost reaching the seating capacity of the Ohio Theater. Our speaker today, Dr. Alan Payind, is a native of Afghanistan and will speak to us about the environment in that country today. It's an environment that he has experienced not only growing up, but in visits back to the country where he's seen the Soviet rule, the Mujahideen, the Taliban, and the current government structure there today. Dr. Payind studied political science at Kabul University, then did his graduate work here in the States in political science, both for his master's and PhD at Indiana University. He's currently a professor and director of the Middle East Center at The Ohio State University. Please help me welcome to the lectern Dr. Alan Payind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very generous introduction, and thank you for inviting me to share with you a summary of my research on North Africa, the Middle East, and also Afghanistan. I will just briefly say a few things about North Africa and the Middle East, the current popular uprisings. Then I will go to Afghanistan. I have only 30 minutes, and I will just present a summary of that. And usually professors say that, well, I will be brief. I will try to be brief, so that's, I'll leave some time for questions and comments. I will just read something from one of my papers which was published in April of this year. This is about the current developments in Afghanistan after 12 years of the United States troops being in Afghanistan. Let me first give you that before Americans were in Afghanistan, so the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan on December 29, 1979. They were in Afghanistan for almost 10 full years. They left Afghanistan on February the 15th, 1989, after 10 years of occupation. They did not succeed in Afghanistan. There was a fierce resistance in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union and the Soviet forces in Afghanistan, and the United States was one of the major countries supported the Afghan resistance against the Soviet Union. The Soviets left Afghanistan on February the 15th, 1989, and 12 years later, the United States troops entered Afghanistan. It was after September the 11th, 2001. So the terrorist acts on the United States on September 11, 2001, 3,000 Americans were killed in New York and Washington, D.C., and those 4 planes were hijacked. That's a history that all of us know how September the 11th happened. September the 11th, October the 7th, less than a month later, American Air Force bombarded the positions of Taliban in Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda and Taliban were quickly removed from power in Afghanistan. They went and they positioned themselves between a very rugged area between Afghanistan and Pakistan, which are the tribal areas in Pakistan, inside Pakistan. So Al-Qaeda positions themselves there, and Taliban were there. For the first 3 years, the situation in Afghanistan was improving. The American troops did an excellent job there in removing Taliban and Al-Qaeda from Afghanistan. Then came the summer of 2003, and Iraq was invaded by the United States forces. The invasion of Iraq took the focus from Afghanistan, and intelligence and military assets were removed, wrongly assuming that the situation in Afghanistan is improving. They focused on Iraq, and American troops went to Iraq, and after 5,000 American deaths and about 32,000 American wounded, so the American forces finally left Iraq. And then the Obama administration focused more on Afghanistan, because according to the Obama administration, that Afghanistan was a war of necessity and Iraq was a war of choice. So we should focus on Afghanistan. By that time, it was a little bit late. The Taliban have already regrouped in Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda there. So the situation in Afghanistan deteriorated. Today that I'm speaking to you, 12 years have passed since the United States forces entered Afghanistan. Let me read from my paper, which was published. My paper begins with a couplet from one of the Persian poets who passed away, who died in 950 AD. The couplet says that a person who has not learned from the experiences of the history, he or she will never learn from a teacher. The purpose of this philosopher poet was that you have to look at the past so that you can really chart your future. 23 years have passed since the Soviet troops withdrew from Afghanistan. And after 12 years of the United States military involvement in that country, the war between Afghan Taliban and the US-led coalition forces is raging, with no side winning. I was in Afghanistan in this last June, and I did go to different provinces and interviewed different groups of Afghans, from scholars to warlords to people that were fighting, and also American military officers. So I returned back more disappointed, because since September the 11th, I have entered Afghanistan about 13 times. And each time I go to provinces and I talk to people and go to homes and do collect my information. The war between the Afghan and the Taliban and the US-led coalition forces is raging, with no side winning. If the ongoing security, political, and economic policies in Afghanistan continue, and Pakistan remains a safe haven for Al-Qaeda and Taliban, the future may soon tilt against the ineffective and corrupt Afghan government and its foreign supporters. That's what I am not saying. Most of the scholars that who are studying Afghanistan, they conclude that if the current situation will continue, quickly we are losing the war in Afghanistan. As of this moment that I'm speaking to you today, which is November the 18th, it seems that despite the removal of Al-Qaeda and Taliban from power in Afghanistan, and some improvements in the areas of healthcare, education, communication, transportation, and women's rights, which will be discussed in a brief, after 11 years of fighting and enduring, more than almost, Americans have lost in Afghanistan, I just had the statistics about day before yesterday, Americans have lost 2,000 or 2,200 men in Afghanistan, and probably about 1,300 very badly wounded in this 12 years of war in Afghanistan. Let me share with you something here that during my recent trip to Kabul, Nangarhar, Zabul, Helmand, and Kandahar in 2011 and 2012 and 2013, a range of Afghan analysts, tribal leaders, opposition figures, and even some educated government officials warned that despite the overthrow of Taliban regime and some improvements in the capital and some other major cities in Afghanistan, the Afghan public, the general public in Afghanistan, I'm not talking the combatants who have weapons, they're very disappointed and things have not changed for them. The continued failure of both the ineffective and corrupt Afghan government and the US-led coalition alliance to curb the violence. Violence has not decreased, it is increasing. All statistics show that the violence has been, in some areas, especially in the major areas, the violence has subsided. I think day before yesterday, a bomb exploded in the city of Kabul, 60 people are killed. My information is I was just in contact last night, and about, I do not know, 150 people are wounded. This is happening in the city of Kabul. In Kandahar, a Pashtun heartland, which is the epicenter of all the conflict in Afghanistan, still the situation is very volatile, and American troops are now withdrawing. At the end of 2014, American troops will be out of Afghanistan, and only the talk is going on in Afghanistan, here in the United States, whether we should leave about 6,000 troops in Afghanistan, or between 6,000. The military officers are suggesting a larger force in Afghanistan, not to be in the combat situation. Most of the combat is now done by the Afghan national army, the national military, and also by the national police in Afghanistan. And Americans are playing the role of the training and also supplying the weapons and intelligence and others. So the idea is that probably after December of 2014, Americans will not be directly involved in the combat. So the American casualties are decreasing, but the Afghans, since they are taking most of the fight, American troops have done an excellent job in Afghanistan. But what Afghans are attributing this failure in Afghanistan, they say that Americans and the coalition forces came to Afghanistan to focus on Al-Qaeda and Taliban. They were removed. But other things in Afghanistan did not improve. For example, the corruption of the government. Hamid Karzai's government is deteriorating from within. It is so corrupt that about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I think 3 years ago, Kabul Bank, one of the major banks in Afghanistan, about $930 million were taken from that bank without any collateral by the brother of Hamid Karzai and also the brother of the vice president of Afghanistan, Fahim Karzai. And of that, almost $930 million, only $15 or $20 million have recovered. And the rest of them has still lost, and there is no one in prison really, the major. So that is the situation. It's extremely, one of the things that they did not do is that the corruption, the government corruption was not reduced. Elimination is something I'm talking about when it was not reduced. And another major thing that which Americans and the Afghan government and all the coalition forces collectively failed in Afghanistan was they have not reduced the cultivation of the poppies in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is today producing, there is a direct correlation between insecurity in the country and ineffective central government in the production of the illicit drugs and underground and black economy. So in Afghanistan, which used to be Burma, used to be the golden triangle of opium and hashish and other production, today Afghanistan is producing 95% of the world raw opium. This year I have the statistics, just recently I got the statistics that Afghanistan is producing about 34% more poppies than they did in the past 2 years. So the poppy cultivation is one thing. The raw opium is very cheap. It's bought by the traffickers and the processors, and then it is converted to heroin. And farmers are paid a very small amount of money. When this heroin hits the markets and capitals in the Western Europe and the United States, it's about 900 to 1,000 times more expensive than the raw opium paste was bought from the farmers. So now the whole, this is about, I'm talking about between $4 to $5 billion dollar industry, the drug industry in Afghanistan. It's almost 1/4 of the whole GDP of Afghanistan. This has not been reduced, it's increasing. Now, in the scheme of things, focusing on drug production is not, it's mostly security, how should secure Afghanistan from Al-Qaeda and Taliban. Very little attention has been focused on reducing this drug problem. The drug problem is criminalizing the whole economy. From a police officer at the end of the street, and you go up, and military officers and the government ministers are involved in this because it's criminalizing the whole economy. It's a huge economy because it's 1/4 of the GDP. The rest of the money which comes to Afghanistan is through charity and donations from other countries. Let me now, this is the situation here. I will just share with you one thing that here. On October the 7th, 2011, The Guardian reported that one of America's most celebrated generals, General Stanley McChrystal, had issued a harsh indictment of his country's campaign in Afghanistan on the 10th anniversary of the invasion to topple the Taliban. So that was General McChrystal that he said on the 10th anniversary of the September the 11th. And he argued, I will quote him, "The United States began the war with a frighteningly simplistic view of Afghanistan. And even now, the military lacks sufficient local knowledge to bring the conflict to an end. We did not know enough, and we still don't know enough. Most of us," that's what General McChrystal is saying, "most of us, me included, had a very superficial understanding of the situation and the situation in situation. And we had frighteningly simplistic view of recent history of Afghanistan, especially the last 50 years history of Afghanistan." On September 29, let me quote someone else here for you. On July 12th of, no, that's a different, okay. Okay, moreover, because I'm speaking most of the presentation that I have prepared myself. Moreover, in an interview with National Public Radio on August 13, 2009, General Michael Flynn, General McChrystal's chief of intelligence, admitted, and I'm quoting General Flynn, Michael Flynn, "What we really have not done to the degree that we need to do is really, truly understand the population." He's talking about the population of Afghanistan. "The tribal dynamics, the tribal network, the ethnicity, and so on. Such dynamics are different from valley to valley, from city to city." He continued, "We are not more than fingernail deep in our understanding of the environment. Some of us who have been to Afghanistan, we have seen," so the purpose at the beginning was to just go to Afghanistan and get Al-Qaeda and Taliban. But going to a country, it's not enough. The military did a superior job in Afghanistan. But now when it comes to establish a system to govern, the governance is deteriorating in Afghanistan. That did not do as well as others. I just mentioned some of those. Let me now go to what happened. Usually when I give lectures, I go to different universities and different places. I give about 60, 70 public lectures each year. Usually at the end of my talk, they ask me that, "Well, Dr. Payind, you give us a very nasty picture of Afghanistan. Did something good happen in Afghanistan since Americans went there?" I said, "Yes, did. Some good things happened, but the challenges still remain." So let me now share with you some of those things that I have listed here. Some of the positive changes are achievement in Afghanistan. First, Al-Qaeda and Taliban have been driven out of power in Afghanistan, but they are not defeated yet. After the death of Osama bin Laden and the growing threats posed to US drones, fewer foreign terrorists are coming to Afghanistan. This is a significant improvement. Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and many other top leadership have been removed. Especially the American drones are extremely effective in the tribal areas between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Second, Afghanistan is again recognized by the world community. The Taliban government from 1996 to 2001 was recognized by only 3 countries, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Today, Afghanistan is not a failed state. It's just a notch above the failed state. But there is a possibility, who knows? People are thinking that maybe when Americans will withdraw, again the Taliban will come, and then Pakistan will interfere from one end, and Iran is another country which shares boundary with Afghanistan. So these countries can really destroy Afghanistan again, just like they did after the Soviet Union left Afghanistan. So Afghanistan is now recognized by the world community. Third, Afghanistan has a new 261-item constitution. Based on the constitution, two presidential elections and 2 parliamentary elections were held. The next one is scheduled. These elections went well, without killing, without fighting. So this is an improvement in the country after 30 years of war. Don't forget, Afghanistan is in war for 30 years. From the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in December of 1979 up to this moment. So it's all, I counted about 33 years Afghanistan is in war. Okay, now it has a constitution. Okay, foreign assistance in the form of money, equipment, medicine, help to schools is flowing to Afghanistan. The roads, hospitals, universities, schools, and public and private buildings have been built in Afghanistan, reconstructed. Some 20 universities and thousands, and about 8 million kids are in schools, and about 30% of them girls. Taliban would not allow girls to go to school. So this is a significant improvement. Centralized money reform have been a success. In Afghanistan, before Americans went there, 3 kinds of currencies were printed. One by Taliban, one by the Rabbani government, and one by another warlord by the name of Dostan. So now it has only one currency. It's relatively stable. Over 4 million refugees have returned to Afghanistan. When the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, 5 million Afghans became refugees in Pakistan, and about 3 million in Iran. So it was a very large number of the portion of the population. So 4 million have returned. Telephone, television, internet, phones, newspapers are connecting Afghanistan with the world. So this is an improvement. 10, Afghanistan has been removed from the list of failed states. Okay, now, these are the positive things which have happened. So everything is not bad. Let me tell you the major challenges in Afghanistan include, after 10 years, 115,000 US and coalition forces. 100,000 American troops were in Afghanistan, about 50,000 NATO troops were in Afghanistan. They did not succeed, really, to defeat the Taliban and remove the Taliban. So that is, and almost $1 billion per week was the expense of the United States in Afghanistan. It's more than that, per week, $1 billion. So Afghanistan is still unstable, it is still unsecure. An estimated 40,000 Afghan civilians have been killed in the past 10 years, 60% of them by the insurgency. The civilian casualty level in the villages under the bombardment is one of the most negative things which have happened. It is really driving the people against the Afghan government and against Americans. Second, an estimated about 2,000 American troops have been killed, and almost 13,000 have been wounded in Afghanistan. So this is a very high level of casualties that Americans are facing in Afghanistan. Pakistan continues to, this is very important, Pakistan continues to be a safe haven for Al-Qaeda and Taliban and other insurgent groups. They regroup in Pakistan. It's supported by the ISI, the Inter-Services Intelligence of Pakistan. So as long as Pakistan is a safe haven for Al-Qaeda and Taliban, and Iran is sabotaging what Americans are building in Afghanistan, the level of success is minimum in Afghanistan. Aerial bombarding and night raids kill thousands of Afghan civilians each year, contributing to the eroding of support for Afghan government and its international supporters. The fifth, unprecedented levels of corruption in the government offices, courts, police, and military continues in Afghanistan. Co-optation. This is a very major problem in Afghanistan. Co-optation of corrupt and brutal warlords in payments and bribes to some of the insurgent groups who are pumping money back to the Taliban. Let's take American tankers. It's a landlocked country. The oil which comes to Afghanistan, it has to come from Pakistan. And from the borders of Pakistan to where Americans are in combat in Afghanistan, in Helmand and other areas, these tankers are daily bombarded by the Taliban. So what happens now? The security companies which are transporting those oil, these are contractors. They bribe the Taliban to let 1 or 2 or 3 tanks or 5. So in a way, the taxpayers' money is going to the same people who are attacking Americans and Afghans in Afghanistan. So that situation has not been controlled. It still goes on. Post-Taliban Afghanistan produces about 95% of the world's raw opium. This is a major challenge. Militarization of the foreign aid. That's another problem in Afghanistan. Most of the assistance that the planning of the roads and schools, they do it by the military. So militarization of these civilian projects is a target for the opposition. So that's one thing that it has to be done. The major challenge is that in the United States still the debate is going on whether we should have counter-insurgency in Afghanistan or counter-terrorism. These are the two different things. General Petraeus was the author of the counter-insurgency. Counter-insurgency is that you go to a country like Afghanistan where there are terrorists. There are 4 things that you do in counter-insurgency. You clear the area, you keep the area, you develop the area, and then towards the end you transfer it to the local government and the domestic soldiers. There has to be some footprint in the developmental projects, schools, clinics, these things have to be built. Some sort of economy has to generate the revenue. So it takes 30, 40, 50 years. So finally what happened? The new doctrine is that, it's not a new, it's an old one. They say, well, counterinsurgency, Americans do not have the stomach for that. A poll was taken just about a week ago by CBS and I think other channels. Right now that I'm speaking to you, 3 out of 4 Americans are tired of war in Afghanistan. That's war fatigue. They think the Afghanistan war is not worth fighting for. It's tremendous expense, and human beings are being killed on both sides, so it's not worth fighting for. So that's what the counterinsurgency is. You spend the money, you develop, and you keep, hold, and develop and transfer. But the counterterrorism is just like you do with the drones, aerial bombardment. When you see the insurgents in the borders of Afghanistan, inside Afghanistan, outside Afghanistan, you just go and bombard them. So this is a cheaper way. American boots are not on the ground. You don't care about the development and the improvement of the economy, or the drugs that produce are not produced. So that is counterterrorism. I think the counterterrorism doctrine is winning in the United States. So they want to bring their boots back and probably continue to do the drone and the aerial bombardments. So that is what I just will probably end here and then let you ask me the questions. Yes, please.
We hear of Pakistani support for the Taliban, but we also hear that the Pakistani military is taking significant casualties from the Taliban. How do you reconcile that?
There are 2 groups of Taliban. Most of our media does not differentiate between the 2. One is that Afghan Taliban. These were the Afghan Taliban which were in power, and Americans came and withdrew them from power. They went to Pakistan. They're there. There is another group which are called Pakistani Taliban, Tahrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is in Urdu or Hindi. This is a movement of the Pakistani Taliban. The Pakistani Taliban have 2 objectives: anti-Americanism and anti their own government. The Pakistani Taliban, that's why the Afghan Taliban in Pakistan is refugees there under the thumb of the ISI. So the Pakistani Taliban are not fighting against. So that's one reason why some of these Al-Qaeda and Taliban are still in Pakistan, protected by some of the tribal areas, or by the Pakistani military. So the Pakistani Taliban are the one which are fighting against. A few days ago, there was a guy by the name of Hakimullah Masood that he was killed by drone, and his cousin was killed too. And also there is another person that was killed in Islamabad just day before yesterday by the name of Sarajuddin Haqqani. So these are the drone casualties. So yeah, it's true. The Pakistani Taliban are fighting against. The Pakistani government has terrible time with their own Pakistani Taliban. Yes, please, in the back. I cannot hear you. I'm sorry. So it's a good question. You are absolutely right. The Soviet propaganda was that we are helping Afghans, we are building schools and bridges and things like that. They never said that we are going there to invade. And then finally they ended up, as I mentioned, that about 7 million, 8 million Afghans became refugees. 1.2 million Afghans were killed. About 1 million crippled. 3 million displaced in Afghanistan. These are the statistics. That is not Afghan statistics. So it was a terrible war. The Soviet Union suffered greatly. The statistics, the estimates are that the Soviet Union lost about almost 45 wounded and killed in Afghanistan, 45,000. The Soviet Union never presented the statistics. Okay, now, historians are debating, political scientists, that why the Soviet Union, which after World War II, the last time that the Soviet Union left Russia and went to other countries was Poland, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Bulgaria. That was it. The Soviet Union always supported the coups and regimes in other countries like in Cuba, like in Nicaragua, like in Afghanistan, but they never went, Soviet troops. Red Army did not go to other countries, came to Afghanistan. Why? What happened? There are different theories. One is that it happened in a very sensitive time. The Iranian hostage crisis was going on, and Americans and the Western Europeans, they were all focused on the situation in the hostage crisis of 52 Americans, which were kept about 414 days. This is one of the arguments that President Carter, all of you remember that there were 3 or 4 attempts to release those prisoners. Remember those aborted, the planes crashed and helicopters and others. The Soviet planners were thinking that the United States is about, because the American fleets were in the Persian Gulf, that Americans are attacking Iran. So what they did, they preempted the whole thing. They came to Afghanistan so that if the United States will invade Iran, they will also swap and say that, well, you get out of Iran and we will get out of... That's one of the thinking. These are all sort of analysis that people are doing. Another argument is that the Soviet Union during the Brezhnev, you mentioned Brezhnev, it was, the Brezhnev doctrine was that if a country becomes a socialist and becomes a member of the socialist family, then it becomes the duty of the Soviet Union and other socialist countries to protect that regime. In Afghanistan, a coup was already taken by one of the Afghan communist parties by the name of People's Democratic Party. And according to the Brezhnev doctrine, they recognized that regime, and that regime was falling after 1 year. And the Soviet Union went to save face and keep that regime, and that's why they invaded. Another argument is that it was in 1979. In 1979, some of the reports came that the Soviet Union was producing oil and giving it to the Warsaw Pact members and Cuba and many other allies in other parts of the world, the pro-Soviet regimes. And the Soviet Union oil resources were depleting. They discovered more resources later. And they thought that, well, we should go as close to the Persian Gulf as possible. So that's why they came to Afghanistan. If the Soviet Union would have succeeded in Afghanistan, from the southern tip of Afghanistan to the Strait of Hormuz is about 400 miles or 380 miles. So the Soviet Union could come to that area, build their air bases, and threaten and intimidate the Gulf oil-rich countries so that they can do exactly the same kind of businesses. So that was projecting their power. And I think there were different views. That's why the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Yeah, please.
If you were to advise the President of the United States on a policy, what would be your advice?
My advice would be that the United States from the beginning did not pay much attention to the regional power brokers like Iran. Afghanistan has 6 neighbors: Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. China is a neighbor of Afghanistan. Few of my students really know that Afghanistan shares a boundary with China too. Then with Pakistan about 1,400 miles. So without Afghanistan is a country, historically, Afghanistan was invaded by the Persians, by the Alexander the Great, by Genghis Khan, by Timur-Lan, by British 3 times. None of them succeeded really, effectively ruling Afghanistan. Then the Soviet Union did not do a good job. Americans are now not doing a good job. So Afghans think that it's not the first time. these people have left their traces in Afghanistan. So Afghanistan is a multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-sectarian country. They share their ethnicity with the Turkmenistan, Tajikistan. There are more Tajiks in Afghanistan than there are in Tajikistan. So I mean, that's a fact. Some of us, my students, do not know when I tell them. So Afghanistan is that kind of country. The neighboring countries are extremely important, bringing peace to Afghanistan. The United States at the beginning totally shunned Iranians and anyone else except Pakistanis. And that's what now we are seeing now. Americans are now trying to negotiate with Taliban, repairing fences with Iran. So this is a little bit late. And on the other hand, the United Nations was not given a role in Afghanistan, not a role in Afghanistan. So Americans went there, they thought we can do it. We in coalition forces can really settle the problem in Afghanistan very quickly. And that was what one of the miscalculation was, that things are improving here in 2003. Let's go now fix, we fixed Afghanistan, let's go and fix Iraq. Which, in reality, they did not fix Iraq and they did not fix Afghanistan either. I mean, I'm talking about the coalition forces. Yes, please.
Last question.
If you could eradicate all the poppy business in Afghanistan, what would take its place in the economy?
This has been debated. There are experts who have studied this phenomenon of if there is no alternative crops, when there is no security. Some of you come from farming areas. Let's take, I'm an Afghan landowner. I have 15 acres of land. If I plant in one of my 15 acres poppies and other 14 wheat or corn, the cash that I'm bringing from this one field, I'll be putting less money, less fertilizer, and poppy is a kind of very hardy, does not get much disease like corn and others do. Nothing is wasted. Poppy seeds are used in the cakes. The paste is becoming heroin and others, and the stem is burned as fuel. So that's one of those crops. This 1 acre is producing more. So if there is no work for the people, no alternative crop, no government introduction, no police, so why would I'll be really I'll be insane to just cultivate 15 acres of my land with wheat. And I know that I can get away with murder. So that's what exactly. So there has to be this phenomenon. To remove it, it needs a sustainable kind of from different directions. You have to attack that. You have to increase the police. You have to find job for people not to be in this industry. But to just decide to eliminate it, that's not a good policy. You cannot do that. Some people say that, well, let's burn the crops, let's use the chemical agents, and that's not going to solve the problem.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. And on behalf of Columbus Rotary, extend a gift from Argo and Laney. Have a wonderful time, and thank you so much for coming to Columbus Rotary.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, have a great week. Next week is a networking luncheon. Bring your materials on your